Hello, babes. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new, welcome. So in today's video, I wanted to talk about one of my favorite characters from Sex and the City, and that's Miss Charlotte York. I've always loved Charlotte for how vulnerable and beautiful she was, not just on the outside, but on the inside too. She was an incredible friend, and she had this huge open heart. But one thing I've noticed over the years is that while Charlotte was a hopeless romantic, she was also often desperate. So, as many of you know who watch my videos, almost all of my videos of Sex and the City have been hit with copyright claims. So, I now have a Patreon uploading all Sex and the City videos that include clips of the show and go more into depth with examples and just a longer conversation over there on Patreon. However, what I will be doing now on YouTube is uploading podcast style, which means no video clips nor any audio. So as I've stated before, all future videos will be uploaded in this format, and of course they will be shorter because of the copyright claims. So I hope you guys enjoy. This is a re-upload. I truly appreciate all of the support and how you guys love my Sex and the City breakdown. So I wanted to continue doing them here on YouTube in podcast style. So let's get into it. Welcome to Iconically Iconic. Charlotte was the embodiment of heart eyes. Love was always floating above her because she had so much of it to give. She poured love into everything she did, her friendships and relationships, and a lot of that came from what she was raised to believe. A version of love that looked like what her parents had. Traditional, stable, and picture perfect. However, Charlotte wasn't aware of all the ups and downs and struggles her parents may have had throughout their marriage. She just had this idealized version of marriage because I'm sure they didn't involve her in their marital issues. However, things happen and no marriage is perfect. But I think that's what Charlotte aimed for because that was the image her parents presented. Not saying, of course, that they had a bad marriage. However, they're human. I think that's why she was always on the hunt for a husband. She wasn't just looking for a man, she was chasing that vision of a loving, secure environment she'd seen growing up. But Charlotte was also insecure, and insecurities look different on everyone. Everything in her life revolved around love, marriage, and building her version of a perfect family. And the thing is, we never really got to know what Charlotte liked outside of that. What did she truly love? What were her interests? She didn't seem to have much of an identity beyond wanting to be a wife and mother. We knew she worked for an art gallery and she was an art dealer and she had some form of love for it, but it seemed like that came last to her. I would have loved if Charlotte got into event planning because I think that Charlotte was the perfect person to host an event and get all of the things together, or even became a wedding planner because she loved it so much. And I get it that being a wife and mother is the dream of a lot of women, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's also important to have your own thing, because when the kids grow up and move on with their lives, what are you going to do? You can't make your entire life revolve around being a wife and mom. You've got to have something that's just yours, whether it's painting, sewing, dancing, something that doesn't involve anyone else but brings you joy. Something just for you. While Charlotte knew her worth in the sense that she wanted a man who was on her level and financially stable, something that I always agree with, and that you should never date down, but someone either on your level or above your level. I've spoken about it before. You guys know how I feel about it. However, she was still insecure. As long as a man looked good on paper, she didn't mind looking past things that were right in her face, just so she'd have the image she wanted. And Trey is the perfect example. She ignored so many red flags just to say she was married, even with his mother being a constant factor in his marriage and not being able to do anything without her approval. His mother controlled every aspect of his life, and Charlotte still wanted to be with this man because he looked good on paper. However, she never got a chance to really fully know Trey before just jumping in a marriage with this man. She was in such a rush to be married that she just said, you know what, I'll get to know him during the marriage, which is so backwards. That is not something you do. Marriage is serious. You don't just jump into a marriage and then decide, I'll get to know all of those things later because he looks good on paper. That is not okay, and it's not smart. Now, Charlotte and Trey only knew each other for a month before they were engaged. That is not enough time to get to know someone at all. She had all of the signs right in front of her, and yet she still proceeded to marry him. All because she wanted a fairy tale. Now, one thing Miss Charlotte didn't tolerate was disrespect. But I always found it funny that she had this amount of sympathy for Steve cheating on Miranda. She barely reacted when Miranda was the one who got cheated on. However, she kept saying, Steve? Steve? Yes, Steve. Which is probably because she also cheated on Trey herself and felt like she had a valid excuse, so that may be why she sided with Steve.
You're just so tired.
And I also think it's because she saw Miranda as this strong and capable woman who could handle anything, while Steve got that, oh, he's just a sweet guy who made a mistake treatment. He's not a sweet guy who made a mistake. You know what? I don't like Steve, so anytime I mention his name, it pisses me off. And I just hated all of the girls' attitude towards Steve, like he was this perfect man because he was quote unquote nice. He provided the bare minimum. And actually, he didn't even provide the bare minimum. Steve was nothing but another grown adult child for Miranda to take care of. And she had this whole men will be men attitude. Though she didn't say it outright, you can tell that's how she felt. And I really despise how people treat their strong friend who is always there for others because we hold it together. But it doesn't mean we don't go through things, and because we're not overly emotional and don't ask for help, that we don't have emotions and we don't value people asking if we're good too. Charlotte was very male identified. It just came off differently than it did with Carrie. I will say with Carrie, she at least had hobbies and an identity outside of men. With Charlotte, everything always tied back to a man and marriage. It was all she could talk about. And that insecurity showed in how she carried herself. Like the episode where she was basically hunting down that couple who said they'd introduce her to a guy they thought was perfect for her. She kept calling them, obsessively trying to find out when she could meet him. Her level of thirst was ridiculous. And why are you so desperate? Why are you calling these people's phone down like this, ma'am? Are you okay? Like, what? Child. That's not something a confident woman does. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, then it wasn't meant to be. But Charlotte just couldn't sit in that uncertainty. She had to force the outcome with every relationship, even if it made her look desperate. And what happened was her friend's husband was the one who was actually interested in dating her, because he was into her like a weird creep, but also because he felt Charlotte's desperation. And while Charlotte wasn't exactly like the other women from her class and background, she held on to some of that traditional small-minded thinking, which is understandable because if you've grown up only seeing and hearing one thing, it can be hard to break away from all of it. But those beliefs show up when you see Steve and Miranda's cheating story play out, believing that a woman should never deny her husband because then he'll cheat. But honey, if he wants to cheat, he's going to cheat. You're not going to stop anything. If a man has no discipline and no self-control, then you're not going to change that. It is also not your responsibility to change that. And I wish some women would get out of the mindset that, oh, I can change him. I'm so special and I'm so different. You may not be the same woman that he was dating or in a relationship with previously, but he is still the same man. You're not going to change someone who doesn't want to change. It's as simple as that. And if you've seen that a man has treated a woman previously bad or cheated on her consistently, why would you even want to get in a relationship with that man thinking that you can change him? That's pick-me behavior. Charlotte also had this attitude towards Miranda because she could afford to be a stay-at-home mom and a stay-at-home wife. Miranda couldn't because she was responsible for the mortgage, the bills, taking care of Steve's mother and their son, while Steve had time to be out on the streets cheating like a filthy scoundrel. You know what? Charlotte couldn't understand Miranda because her marriage to Harry was completely different. Harry wasn't a man-child. He had his own career and he didn't rely on a woman to take care of him and help him take on majority of responsibility, which is partly on Miranda because she chose a horrible partner, but this was her husband now, and Charlotte couldn't relate to that. All you had to do was be fake nice, charming, well-dressed, and Charlotte would give you a chance. That being said, I do think Charlotte's way of thinking when it came to love was beautiful. Not necessarily romantically, but how she loved her friends and how she was there for Carrie after Big left her at the altar. Yes, she may have been desperate at times, but that is because she truly believed in love. She didn't carry that bitterness or negativity that so many people fall into after a few bad experiences. A lot of people get in a funk because they keep picking bad partners, and over time that chips away at their outlook. But Charlotte, even with all of her hiccups and bumps along the way, never gave up or became pessimistic, which is how she met Harry. Though we know that Charlotte and Harry had their issues before getting there, they got there. And I think that's something worth admiring. It's completely okay to feel stuck or frustrated when it comes to dating because you feel like it's rinse and repeat, but you have to also be mindful of what you're putting out there. If you're constantly self-sabotaging or being overly self-deprecating, you're not going to attract someone who means you well or a loving, supportive, positive partner. And if you do, after a while, they will walk away because it's extremely draining and mentally exhausting dealing with someone who has that type of attitude. Majority of the time, you'll attract someone who will take advantage of those insecurities. Would you want a partner who has that kind of energy if that's not who you are? Absolutely not. So you can't give what you don't want to receive. And you definitely shouldn't settle just because you want to be loved, because that never ends well. Charlotte was my favorite preppy princess. She may have had her judgmental moments, and we all know she did. Her narrow-minded takes here and there, but one thing you couldn't say was that she wasn't a good friend and that she wasn't kind. She loved hard and she loved people deeply. Just like Samantha. It's funny because they had so much in common despite being total opposites in how they were raised, but both of them, they were the kind of friends that you could call no matter what, and they would always show up, which is why they will always be my two favorite characters. And she was funny. I love the way she'd make certain facial expressions or how she'd act something with genuine curiosity, but it would come off hilarious just in the way that she would ask. I would have loved to see Kristen play the role of a princess in a movie because she had the perfect qualities for it. And though she was in her 30s, she definitely could have played a 20-year-old easily. She just had that charm to her. But I don't think Disney would have allowed that because of the role she played on the show. And not so much her role, but the nature of the show and its adult content. Like I said before, Charlotte had her issues, especially when it came to dating and her desperation when it came to dating, and she could sometimes be a brat and stubborn, stuck in her ways. She really did care about others, and she wasn't self-absorbed. Maybe sometimes. And with that being said, this video has come to an end. Don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe. Also, make sure your notification bells are turned on so that you always know when I upload. And I will catch you guys in the next one.